like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago.
Well, that was President Trump's take on those photos of former President Clinton floating around in Jeffrey Epstein's hot tub. And look, he's right. He's 100% right. We don't know that anything nefarious was going on, questionable, yeah, but anything nefarious was going on with Clinton or any other men pictured with Epstein. All we know is that they traveled in his social circles, as did many, many other rich and powerful men. And today what happened? The DOJ, they released more Epstein files. And as expected, there were more redactions. It led to more outrage on both sides. In fact, here's what Republican Congressman Thomas Massie had to say on Face the Nation yesterday about those redactions.
They're flouting the spirit and the letter of the law. It's very troubling, the posture that they've taken. And I won't be satisfied until the survivors are satisfied. But it's really the Attorney General's office, Pam Bondi, who is responsible. The quickest way, and I think the most expeditious way to get justice for these victims is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi. And that doesn't require going through the courts.
All right, so let's look at this two ways, the legal, the political. Joining me now, legal scholar, Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz, who's been fighting to have all the files released, and Trump's former chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. It's great to have you both here. Professor, I'm going to start with you. Look, inherent contempt is very interesting. I don't think it's been done since 1934, but it takes the DOJ out of it, right? Congress would theoretically be arresting Pam Bondi. The idea would be that not all the files were released that day, as the law said. And the other argument, well, you know, look, they needed time to prepare. Well, didn't you say you went through all the files in July and said there was no client list, there was no co-conspirator, so the files should have been prepared? I guess the question is inherent contempt a realistic possibility?
Absolutely not. What we're seeing is a return of bipartisan McCarthyism. I grew up with McCarthyism. I was the president of my college class, my college, Brooklyn College, and I saw McCarthyism at very close up. What we're seeing is McCarthyism. What we're seeing is people's names being given. They must be guilty, guilt by association, guilt by accusation. And you know what they're withholding? They're withholding the information that would show that some of these so-called survivors and so-called victims are themselves perpetrators and absolute liars. Let me give you an example.
Well, Professor, I'll allow you to jump back into that. I just got to ask you about that. There's one thing to say Michael Jackson's in a photo or David Copperfield's in a photo, and it might be embarrassing. When you look at the former president in a hot tub and somebody's face is redacted, or he's in a picture with Mick Jagger and her face is redacted, or you look at pictures of Jeffrey Epstein with redacted faces of clearly children, there is a value to this. I mean, it seems to me that it all comes down to, in 15 days, less than 15 days, they have to tell Congress, these are the redactions. These are the reason why. Was this person a minor? Was this person a victim? Was this an ongoing investigation? Isn't it too early to say it's McCarthyism?
It is McCarthyism. What we're seeing is people being accused, and nobody has the right to defend themselves. Maria Farmer, she is the poster child for a victim. She is a Holocaust denier. She says that Jews control the world. Jews are pedophiles. She has accused people of being at Epstein's house years before they ever met Epstein. She is a complete and total certified liar. And yet she's CNN's poster child. And the same thing is true of many other people as well. That's what McCarthyism was like. You make an accusation, but you deny the accused person the right to defend himself or herself. And what we're seeing is the names of every accused person has to be put out there, but the accusers have the names redacted. It's pure McCarthyism. And by the way, there aren't 12,000 victims. There are many, many fewer real victims. Many of these...
the only counter-argument to that, I would say, is they're releasing all these photos, and the same government also released that memo saying that there's no other crime being investigated, there's no other conspirator, so even as bad as these photos are, they're saying there's no crime. I just have to... Let me get to Mick real quick, Professor. Mick, you think the administration should just release everything at this point? Mick?
Yeah, and that's a political calculation, because I don't think this is going to go away until they do. Look, when Bill Clinton is saying put everything else out there, including the stuff that includes him, then you're in a tough spot politically. I'll let Professor Dershowitz deal with the legalities of it. I agree with some of what he said. I disagree with some of what he said. I'm looking at this from a pure political standpoint. The Republicans made an issue of the Epstein file during the campaign. In fact, they did it for the last several years, right? This is a difficulty of their own making. And I don't think this goes away until they just let everything go out there. I don't think anybody really believes that there's criminal activity on the part of Bill Clinton or Donald Trump or any fill in the blank. It's embarrassing, but not criminal. Accusations, that's a word to me that means you're being accused of a crime. I don't think anybody's saying that here. I think they want to know who does what. There's a whole class of people, bunch of people, who want to know if the rich and the powerful in this country get treated differently. By the way, I think they probably do, but I don't mean that thinks that you can't sort of just go ahead and produce the entire files. Again, so the professor may have an issue with this legally. I'll leave that to him. Yeah. From a political standpoint, this is not going away until they produce everything.
And Professor, Professor, let me just get back to you, but I have to read you. We put it up there, this statement from Bill Clinton's team, where they wrote, someone is being protected. We do not know whom, what, or why, but we do know this. We need no such protection. We call on President Trump to direct Attorney General Bondi to immediately release any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of Bill Clinton. Refusal to do so will confirm the widespread suspicion the DOJ's actions to date are not about transparency, but about insinuation, using selective release to imply wrongdoing about individuals. I mean, look, there is a question about release everything to put it into context.
He's absolutely right. From day one, I asked to release everything. I waived all my privacy rights. I waived all my confidentiality rights. If you're innocent of any wrongdoing, you want everything out there. If you're guilty, or if you're lying, if you're accusing people and lying about it, then you want everything to be redacted. And that's what McCarthyism was. This is bipartisan McCarthyism. No politician has the guts to stand up and say this is wrong, because they'll be accused of victim shaming. They'll be accused of supporting Epstein, just the way politicians wouldn't stand up against Joseph McCarthy because they were afraid of being called communist sympathizers. And that's what we're seeing, an absolute repeat. Where's the American Civil Liberties Union? Where are defense lawyers? Where are people who generally are out there defending the rights of people who are falsely accused? There are a lot of people being falsely accused by testimony that would become clear and it's false if you released everything. So we're both in favor of releasing everything. No redactions, nothing held back, release everything. And you know who's going to complain most? The lying witnesses, the ones who are falsely people.
Look, Professor, I'm all about transparency, but also at the same time, when I see photos of clearly young children and their faces being blacked out, I say those faces should be blacked out. But look, I hear you. I hear 100% what you're saying. I hear you.
This is somebody who his former girlfriend had a child, and he became the godfather to the child, and that's what we're seeing. This is the worst kind of McCarthyism. When you put that kind of stuff,
I understand, but at the same time, this is not about. Maybe there's an investigation happening in New York. But that's look. I go back to this. I got to wrap up. But I got to say this. It all goes back to the redactions. It goes back to the explanation of the redactions. When we get that, we should have a follow-up conversation. Professor Dershowitz. Professor there's already redactions. They have to explain them. They have to explain them under the law. Professor Dershowitz, thank you. Mick Mulvaney, thank you. Conversation for another time. Appreciate it. Happy holidays. All right.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.